tough stuff, Eric Holder was in the bathroom.
Gutless, spineless. You know, the president today, when he marched him out there to announce his resignation, the president pointed to the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. That is where the Attorney General has spent most of his time. Now, granted, I am not knocking the Civil Rights Division of our Department of Justice at all when it's being used fairly.
In a non-political sense.
But this particular Attorney General has taken the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice and used it to try his level best to get back, and I'm using those terms right there, to get back at the white race here in the United States. It's not been to make a level playing field. It's not to make any sort of strides for minorities.
That's not fair. Because he's also used the Civil Rights Division to go after the political enemies of the president. So,
okay, well, all right, that's true. White people and Republicans in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. But he's certainly not a political guy. No way. He's just trying to do the tough part.
And if it sounds like we're trying to kick Eric Holder as he's going out the door, yes.
Yes. I'm trying to kick him as hard as I can out the door. But again, that leaves us with, if we think he's bad, who is the president going to try to stick in his place? And is he going to try to do it during a lame duck session of the Senate so that he doesn't have to go through a messy confirmation? Because that's another thing that people have got to take into consideration. It would not be out of the question for this president to do that. You remember he made some appointments during another lame duck session of the Senate that the Supreme Court actually made him rescind because they were unconstitutional.
But see, this president doesn't care about whether it's constitutional or not.
That's
Again,
right.
It's not a matter, you've said it, I've said it. With this president, it's not a matter of what the law allows him to do. It's what he will do.
That's right. That's right. It doesn't matter if he can do it or not. It's whether he will do it or not. I'm petrified at the thought of who is going to replace Eric Holder.
The term swapping the devil for the witch?
Yeah. I mean, will they be even more militant than Eric Holder is? I'm sorry, but Eric Holder is a racist pig. All of the people that he has accused of racism, what the man needs is a mirror to look in. If he's really looking for a racist, he need look no further than his own shaving mirror. I've never seen an attorney general with such a hatred for Caucasians than Eric Holder. It makes me absolutely insane at his disdain for all things white.
And as it has been pointed out today, no, Eric Holder is not the first, quote-unquote, political attorney general that this country's had. John Mitchell, for Richard Nixon.
Robert Kennedy
was one. Robert Kennedy, he was very political. It's just he happens to be the most political, and out of all political attorneys general, he is the worst.
Well, he has been smacked down by the Supreme Court more than any attorney general in our nation's
Ever.
history.
In the history of attorneys general.
In the 8 years of the Clinton administration, there were not, 20 judgments against President Clinton. In 8 years of Bush. And Bush was the author of the Patriot Act that you and I hate. Still,
and most of our listeners, I think, got a,
as much as you and I got after George Bush for, wiping his feet on the Constitution, they're not. Bush nor Clinton are a drop in the bucket.
They're amateurs
when compared to Eric Holder, and Barack Obama. They're not worried about whether or not what they're doing is legal. They're not worried about whether or not what they're doing is constitutional.
They're just worried about, can we get away with it?
Yeah. They are of the school that says it's better to ask forgiveness than it is to ask permission.
And they've never once asked forgiveness.
No.
After all these smackdowns.
And it's because they don't believe they're doing they really, truly, deep down in their hearts, they don't believe they're doing anything wrong. Eric Holder doesn't see himself as a bigot.
And see, what I want to know, if you have no respect for law, how the heck do you go to law school?
Well, that's you could turn around and say, if you've got no respect for the Constitution, how do you become a professor of constitutional law, like our president? I mean, he has no respect for the Constitution.
Well, let's take a look at the president's, some of the, he was on the Harvard Law Review. He was actually the president of the Harvard Law Review, right?
I believe so.
Well, can we take a look at some of the reviews of constitutional law that he wrote?
No.
Oh, why?
Because he was present. Kind of like when he was a senator.
He didn't actually write any reviews?
Yeah.
Or publish any?
Yeah. Kind of like when he was a senator, he didn't have any legislation, with his name on it. He just, or any real votes for that matter. He voted against going into Iraq, which is kind of ironic, seeing as how.
Well, wait a minute.
He's bombing the mess out of them now.
He wasn't a senator, I think, until 2005. Well, I think when he was sworn in, he spoke against as a candidate. He spoke against the Iraq War, but see, he didn't actually have to cast any votes on that either.
Wow! So this president really he's just been present. He's been a present president.
Well, and some could even argue against that unless you can be presidential with a 9-iron in your hand.
Well, I was going to say he has pulled off something pretty dynamic in being the first absentee present president.
Yeah. I mean, which is an amazing feat, But
he's done a remarkable job. The president went before the UN this week. And had to bring up Ferguson, Missouri, in the middle of an address to the UN. Charles Krauthammer over at Fox says, well, at least he didn't have to leave home to continue the apologetics tour, because that's more or less what he's doing. The president, instead of showing the United States to be, made up of exceptional people that do exceptional things, he holds up, dark moments in our nation's history and says, well, we do have this going on, which, when compared to the beheading of journalists.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, there's no contest. What happened in Missouri was, golly, that's way worse than any beheadings that's going on.
Not to mention that, he told Assad, don't cross this red line, and now he's bombed the very people who were attacking Assad.
Yeah.
He's a president of incredible resolve.
He's incredible something.
Well, he's resolved he will not miss a tea time.
I would say he's resolved to drive this country into ruination. It's also I gotta say, I can't get away from this. Who is advising the president about his next choice for Attorney General? Al Sharpton.
Yeah.
Al Sharpton is advising the President of the United States about who he should choose for the Attorney General. Or I should say Al Sharpton's group, the Action Network, or whatever it is.
But anyway, you're trying to make sure that none of our listeners get to sleep tonight, obviously.
Well, yeah.
Because talking about, could we find a worse Attorney General, to nominate? And then you go and say, don't worry about it, guys. Al Sharpton's on the case.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So,
my bad.
I know Richard out there in the chat. Richard's not going to get no sleep tonight, man.
No, well, and I'm about to make him lose his lunch, because the next little topic that I've got to get into, of course, is, you were talking about the president and his red line in Syria.
Right.
Well, we've had some airstrikes over there in Syria. And here's what I find just fascinating. Fascinating stuff. When George Bush went into Iraq, the liberals were going nuts.
They howled.
Yeah. NBC News, ABC, CBS, they treated President Bush worse than a redheaded stepchild. They're kind of backing off a little bit on this president, though, when he goes into Syria, a sovereign nation, and launches airstrikes against Syrians. He's also having airstrike after airstrike after airstrike in Iraq. Oddly enough, MSNBC, NBC, ABC, CBS, they're going out of their way to make it okay for this president to do these things without congressional approval. Yesterday, I'm watching, I had it over on the Fox News channel because Jen Psaki was having a sit down with Shepard Smith. And she was vigorously defending the president's right to do these bombing runs. But I also heard from Rosie O'Donnell.
No.
This is where Richard is out in the chat is going to get really mad at me.
Sorry, Richard.
I've got some Rosie O'Donnell audio for everybody to hear from The View. It seems that The View are The View and let's see, The View and Rosie O'Donnell are about the only ones that are calling the president out on what he's doing. But Rosie O'Donnell, she got all misty about these airstrikes because she just can't understand why a president would want to put the nation back at war. When my child was so small and we were at war, and now I have another child and we're going to be back at war. It seems like war never ends. And she's questioning, it was oil. That's why we went into Iraq originally.
Right. Oil that we get so much of.
Oh, yeah. And
from Iraq.
She seems to think that there is some sort of financial gain at the end of this, which I've got another audio clip to counter that as well.
When you get done playing Rosie, I've got something that might cheer her up.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and play Rosie then.
Okay.
This is Rosie O'Donnell's take on scratch that. This is The View. The View's take on our airstrikes into Syria and Iraq.
Just before we went on the air, President Obama addressed the United Nations about American airstrikes against ISIS in Syria. So the U.S. is at war again. I mean, I know he's been trying to avoid it, but, I guess now that we have some other countries behind us and we're going after ISIS, does this make it any easier?
I'll tell you this much. I know what all the pundits are saying. I know all the facts and everything like that. What I don't know is exactly how I'm feeling about it. I'm terrified. I don't know if it's a great decision to go in, if it's not a great decision to go in. Should we have done it before or not? That doesn't matter. We're here today, and it's very scary. As a New Yorker, experiencing 9/11, the possible threat of someone coming up to me or another citizen of the United States and potentially going for their throat is terrifying. So what do we do about it? And right now it's like, it's just scary to me, and that's how I feel.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely scary. It's scary to me to think that when I had my last baby 12 years ago, we were just getting into war, and she was 1, and now I have another 1-year-old. And we've just bombed another country. And even though it doesn't say so on the news, we went to war yesterday in America against another country in the Mideast. And to me, no matter what, that's wrong. Because you don't fight violence with violence.
I don't know if we can put it up again, but what struck me, what I felt when I saw President Obama is it's such a brutal job. He looks like he's aging by the second.
Yeah.
And he's a really fit guy.
Yeah.
And this job ages